more for the fact that I got 2 or 3 chapters out here that are pretty much asleep at the switch. We've got to make some changes there, but I've got 3 or 4 chapters up here that are pretty much on fire, and they're all doing a great job. So half of the a little over half of the chapters are doing a superb job, and it's just one end of the spectrum or the other. They're either doing a superb job or they're just asleep. So we're working on that aspect, but that's the way it works.
Who in Massachusetts is speaking?
This is Dave Robeson.
Okay. Because I've got
was-
one that has lots of heritage from Massachusetts. Actually, his great aunts started DAR in Massachusetts.
Oh, is that right?
And, yeah, and I'm having trouble with his generation 4.
Good evening, folks.
Well.
This is Gary Green, and I'm the Genealogist General, and I want to welcome you to the final rendition of Registrar and Genealogist training. When I say that, I'm going to do another bait and switch and offer what I call the prequel of genealogist training. Ralph Nelson, who's been in the genealogy or registrar business for 23 years in Delaware, Florida, and now North Carolina, has built a program so that he can hand off his registrar duties. And he's had to do it several times, different chapters in the 3 states. And he's trying to do it one more time in North Carolina. And he's built this training program that I think will be a good capability for people who are trying to say, I got a new registrar, I've got to give them something to get started with. I think what we've been going through is excellent, but I think it also has to do with folks who know pretty much what they're doing, and we're tweaking it. But we need to have that first step of what you do as a registrar, and Ralph's going to offer that next week for those who are interested. I'm going to turn it over to Dennis Van Wormer so that he can give us last bit of information from the genealogy committee. So Dennis.
All right, thank you, Gary. Let's see. Get everybody muted. Get this slideshow started. Oops. Be better if I shared it first, I suppose. There, now let's try it. Okay, hopefully everybody's seen the title slide now. As Gary said, this is the 6th and last session of the chapter registrar and genealogist training. Will be the same thing that we've gone through the other week. I call it final topics and thoughts because there's just a number of shorter topics that I think I believe are appropriate to this course as we finish this up. And so we'll go through these. It should be still about an hour. And like last week, I have updated the slides where appropriate to the new application preparation guide and the can't remember what it is now. Genealogy Committee policies as approved on September 30th at the fall leadership meeting. So let's get started. First slide is just a recap on responsibilities and tasks. So went over these the first week, but trying to keep these in front of everybody. All names and dates and places on the application must be proven. Important to speeding up the review process. Key points here, all and must be proven. This is a fairly recent change to the genealogy committee policies. I've mentioned it in previous sessions. This primarily is addressing the issue of non-bloodline spouses and their information. And The Genealogy Committee changed the wording of section 3.5000 to specifically say that everything on the application must be proven, and that includes non-bloodline spouse information that's provided. And the staff genealogists have all been directed to bracket anything that is not proven, including non-bloodline spouse information. Now, there is a little bit of a conflict. There are, I'm pretty sure the PDF form, maybe the Word form, I'm not sure about each one, but some of these different formats still have a disclaimer on their form that says something to the effect, proof is needed only for the individuals in the bloodline. Committee has recognized that those forms are out of date, and that statement needs to be removed, hopefully sometime in the future, so that there's no confusion as to providing proof for all facts. Second one, key point, big one, should be obvious, but by signing the application, the state registrar verifies that it contains everything and everything is true to his review and meets the requirements. This is important. It's kind of the same as the first one. If an application is poorly prepared, poorly cited, or insufficiently proven, that just takes longer for the staff genealogist to review it. Sometimes they're trying to correct some of the things, but sometimes they have to pen it. Now they have to write a letter to back to the state and say what all the issues are. So very important that we always try to make as close to a perfect application as we can. And likewise, if the state registrar decides it's not sufficient, he should return those applications to the chapter registrar or the applicant to resolve any concerns. And these are all out of the new APG, but basically these statements are pretty much came from the previous APM also, although they've been somewhat reworded. Okay, so let's go on to one of the short topics being expedited applications. Again, these words are all been updated to either the latest policy document or the APG, and it gives you the corresponding reference information, location information at the top. So these specific statements are right out of the policy. So if somebody wants to expedite an application, it can be essentially anybody, as it says, the first line says, it can be an applicant, a sponsor, the state officer, right up to state president, and they can make their request to any of those three gentlemen, executive director, genealogy director, or chairman of the genealogy committee, and email requests are considered as written. My suggestion to everybody is, number one, write it to all three of them. Bet your best chance of somebody noticing it quickly and starting the review process. And number two, I just always generally say, yeah, an applicant can do it, but it's going to look a lot better if it's coming from a state officer, especially from the state president. So usually in Michigan, when we have one of these, which is not very often, we take it right to the state president and have him send the expediting request to all three compatriots mentioned here. And there is an authorization. The authorization takes a different number of members. I didn't put all the words in here, but basically there's three categories of reasons and certain numbers there. So for instance, if the request is for an active duty military applicant currently serving in a war zone or facing imminent deployment, only one of those three officers or chairman need to approve it, and it'll be expedited. If it's an applicant that's considered a very high social or government status, such as governors, ambassadors, etc., two of the three approvers must agree. And any other cases, all three of them must agree before it can be expedited. Oops, I missed the other one. If it's applicants who are nearing the end of their lives, such as in hospice care, extremely advanced age, that also only requires one of the three to approve it. So those are the kind of reasons, and they're all in 6.4001 and 2. Gives you the details on how to do it. And there is an appeal process. If there's an adverse decision, if you get a negative answer back, it can be appealed to the President General. So that's the process for an expedited application. The other one I want to touch on is grandfathered applications. Now this is, in my way of looking, this is a bit more formal and higher, because this comes straight, this is in the bylaws. This is not a policy. This is not an APG document only. This information here is directly out of bylaw 1, section 5. So first bullet, can anybody who's a close relative of present or former members, gives you exactly who they can be: brothers, sons, grandsons, nephews, and great nephews. You can apply using a copy of that former member's approved application, otherwise known as a record copy, and whatever you need to provide acceptable documentation to that person. So obviously, still need a birth certificate, as if it's, say, a brother or a son, and you may need a second generation there, if it's or even a third if it goes farther down the line. The key here is whether it's considered documented sufficiently to current genealogical standards. We always have a number of discussions on this. We went through this a bit in the spring with the genealogy committee when we made a decision to put a date on acceptable applications, and that date became January 1st, 2012. So the key there is you may have an older relative from prior to that, and maybe if they're before 2012, they may or may not be documented sufficiently, but they could be grandfathered. Couple points I'll just want to touch on. One of them is, keep in mind that what we're saying here is, let's see, the second one, no additional proof required, provided the lineage is not disproven by SAR, and that the ancestors' Revolutionary Service is proven in accord with current requirements. So if the lineage is just not sufficiently proven, but maybe it had a book, a family history published book that prior to 2012, and it's not considered acceptable to current standards, as long as there's not something else that they've determined that disproves that lineage, it's still okay. On the other hand, the Revolutionary Service must be right up to current requirements. Okay, would whoever it is, please mute. Okay, thank you. And I know this is my my experience has been, they always keep saying, well, go ahead and provide the extra information. And I know some applicants have tried some, but I've seen a number of the ones that I've done with it, they were more concerned with getting it approved. We had one a couple of years ago where two sons used their father's application. They're adults now, but their father was admitted back in the mid-70s, and it was this case where it wasn't quite sufficiently proven, but it was not disproven. So when this happens, the application, the new applications, just another point that I've had, sometimes people have not understood. If you submit an application this way, the new application, when it's accepted, that one gets stamped that it's grandfathered. That one cannot be used for any further applications. However, the original one that's from the close relative of present or former members, that one is not grandfathered. And that one is still available to be used by that same limited number of, or limited categories of people. And I've had people that have not understood how that works exactly. So as the bottom line says, the application may be proof that one is annotated as grandfathered. Okay, I want to talk about appeal process. Actually, this slide and the next one show the appeal process that we have here in Michigan. Hopefully you all have an appeal process within your state as applications are reviewed and may not come up to snuff, but I'm just going to go quickly through this of what we do within Michigan as an appeal process. First bullet, just the standard registrar of reviews, and that means state registrar, and the genealogist or state genealogist assists. And then we also have a genealogy committee that is available to assist when there's questions. And if the registrar feels he will pen we do pen them on the state level. Same thing, if he finds the lineage or the proof of service insufficient, he will pen it on the state application, and it comes back to the genealogist, the chapter registrar, and the applicant. In reality, we have a good working set of chapter registrars, so the state registrar sends it back to them and says, no, this is what's wrong with it, or this is the additional information I need. And we go through a similar process as happens on a national level. And in the way we cover any disputes that might arise is I, as state genealogist, am chairman of the genealogy committee, but it's the committee itself. It's the genealogy committee that has the final say within Michigan on questions like that, on this, as to whether what the interpretation of something is or whether something's sufficient or not. And then if we just get to the point that it's not acceptable, the registrar will return it back. And we do have an appeal process here where the applicant can appeal a rejection to the board of managers and appealing it at the next board of managers meeting. I don't believe we ever actually had any come that way, but that is our process that we use within Michigan. Now, on a national pending, which you're probably all familiar with, and again, these are directly out of the genealogy committee policy. An applicant, he has to have concurrence of somebody on his state, has the right to request that the genealogist general review an adverse decision or decisions. Now, it's called an adverse decision here. Again, keep in mind that, and I shouldn't have just said pended. There is an appeal process. It's really called for an adverse decision. There's 3 different categories listed in the application, 6.1A, I believe it is, 6.6001A. So the first possibility is what we normally expect. It could be pended. The whole application is not approved for one or more reasons. But you can also have an adverse decision where the application is approved, but some pieces of information within that application have been bracketed, disallowed, disproven, whatever you want to call it, and the applicant doesn't agree. So, for instance, an applicant may have submitted, say, 2 or more types of patriotic service for the patriot, and at least one of them is approved, so his application gets approved, but one or more of the other ones gets disproved, and that's bracketed. And he feels that no, they've done that service. You can have an appeal based on the fact that even though the application was approved, you're appealing the fact that a given patriotic service was disproven. Likewise, pretty much anything that's in the lineage. You can appeal that you disagree that a given date or a given location for an event was disproven, or maybe a name, which would probably usually be a non-bloodline spouse, but it could be part of a name of somebody in the bloodline. Any of those things that are disproven are subject to appeal if the applicant chooses to do that. And it goes to the genealogist general. If he reverses the decision, it's reversed. If he agrees with the genealogy staff, then again, there is another appeal process there to take it to a second level. So those are possible. I don't know that I can remember one in the last 2 or 3 years from Michigan where we appealed a staff decision and had it overturned, but I think only one that I can remember. And we certainly don't appeal very often because they're usually pretty darn good. Okay, couple of points here on I found an issue with myself as I got into being registrar and genealogist, and continue that you just have to keep up with the policy updates. What were the APM updates will now be the APG updates. But in my opinion, and I'm not aware of any consistent method of notification of these updates. The genealogist general, Gary, has done a good job so far this year, trying to get the information out when something changes. But I truly wish there was some better method off the website that gave you more of an automatic notification when these things changed. But so my advice to people is just check the website every so often. You can go under the members pull down menu of forms and manuals. You can also go under the genealogy pull down menu, and you'll find them under SAR genealogy policies and materials. And I just recommend to everybody that you regularly take a quick look and make sure you've got the latest. Likewise with GG email updates, I think this one's been less of an issue. And what I tell our people is the state genealogist, in Michigan's case, that's me. I'm also the state's point of contact, which hopefully always puts me as number one on the list for Michigan for email updates. But I know Gary has added a lot of other people, and I know I have several, not only is the state registrar on this, but also several chapter registrars are on his distribution list. So that's a pretty good way to get it out. But you can also go on genealogy policies and materials, and actually I think they go all the way back to John Sink's start, something like 2014, that you can go back through those. And I have a couple times, and boy, that takes a while to find some specific points of interest, or to find the trail of changes as they went back several years. But they're on that pull down menu if you're looking for details on what might have been sent out on GG emails. Let's see. Okay. Now, I've got several slides I want to go here. This is a little bit longer issue, and that's background checks. When I talk about this one, everybody usually says, well, it's important, but it's an uncomfortable topic for a lot of people. And I know our chapter registrars, as you get into the more details, tend to be more concerned about what this means and need some help on this. So what we did a couple years ago, you'll see it says 2020, I had a guy by the name of Jim Petrus prepared this section for our first go around of chapter registrar training. So Jim's a past Michigan state president. He's a past now past Great Lakes District VPG, but more importantly, he's a past chief of police from one of the suburbs around Detroit, and he was also an undersheriff in one of the Southeast Michigan counties. So he has plenty of knowledge and experience in law enforcement and what tools are available to do this kind of check. And he put this together for us. I won't go through all the details, but I'm going to hit the highlights of what we discussed it, and I'll show you where we ended up, at least in Michigan, what we decided to do about it. Consider this food for thought. Maybe we can have a little discussion on the end if other states have tried something different, but here's what we chose to do in Michigan. So first of all, go back to the basics. Bylaw 1, Section 2, an applicant shall make oath that the statements in his application are true to the best of his knowledge and belief. Pretty straightforward. And how does he do that? There's that big, what used to be a fairly short certification statement, got much longer a few years ago on near the bottom of his application, and actually any supplemental also stating that he certifies that he meets the eligibility requirements, Article 3, yada, 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 but specifically a citizen of good repute in the community and does not advocate the overthrow of the government of the United States by use of force or violence. And a few other statements about it's correct to the best of his knowledge. This is when you look at this and take a serious look at it. This is one reason, as I mentioned before in a previous one, why you do not let just anybody sign a person's application, and you do not let somebody say, well, I want to give my husband, brother, this, that, or the other person a membership for his birthday. So how do I do that? And can I just sign it for him? And my answer is always no. This is essentially a legal statement. The legal committee or the chancellor general a couple years ago went through this and decided that this was what they wanted on there to put some meat into what the applicant was signing when he signed that he wanted to be a member in SAR. So that's where it starts. Then we say, thinking about it, what are our concerns about this applicant's background? Again, reviewing what are requirements for membership. Often we're only focusing on genealogy, which is a big one, but as the bylaw says and the attestation says, his requirement is also to be a citizen of good repute in the community and that he's not advocating the overthrow of the government. Why is that important? Well, think about it. Number one, the reputation of our organization. Having somebody in our organization that ends up in headlines or this or that, and for doing something and say, whoa, he's a member of SAR. What kind of a group are they? You know, what our members do certainly can reflect and does reflect both positively and possibly negatively on the organization. More importantly, or as important as far as I'm concerned, is the fact that we have members, compatriots, that are mingling with youth and directing youth in our various youth programs and contests, in the CAR with the various local and state societies to CAR, and just whatever liability concerns there might be based on the action of a member of SAR. So there should be concerns in your mind about allowing somebody in that does not uphold these high standards. And then the next thing we talked about, well, how do you know the applicant? And this was quite a discussion. I mean, I've heard many times that way back when people who got an SAR were pillars of the community, or at least well-known in the community, and, you know, you knew what this person was and what their qualifications are. And in some sense, you may still, it may be a relative, friend, neighbor, or coworker, and you probably know this person well and probably have no concerns or issues in a great majority of cases. But as most of you are sitting here, you're getting requests for applications and helping people fill out applications that you don't have a clue who this person is. And thus, there may be concerns or issues, or should be reason for concern of issues, the less you know about this given person. So what our law enforcement guy Jim said, well, there's quite a package or a plethora almost of record or background checks. One of the easiest ones is your basic internet search. Google the person's name on there and see what you come up with. Obviously, you have to deal with multiple people of the same name. You have to check their ages, their locations, make sure you know who you're checking on here if you get something negative. There are a number of paid sites that you can use. We have a couple of people that have used some of these sites and have reason to have subscription to them, but you know, it's still a paid site. And there's a number of government sites. There's both state and national sex offender registry, and various criminal Department of Corrections, state police in your state, court records, FBI. So there are a number of checks, and you know, you can look at it and say, well, that's kind of overwhelming. So what are we going to do? And so, you know, we had to go through and decide what did we think was a reasonable, at least minimum amount of checks we should make. And then we're back to the basic dilemma. Yes, the application is signing the certification statement, but is he signing it truthfully? And should more be done than just saying, well, he signed a statement, so that's good enough? Do the sponsors, you have supposed to have two members in good standing or current members, and they're signing it. And sometimes that's taken seriously. I know as well as others, and I've done it myself, where we've signed, especially as a co-sponsor, for somebody we really don't know. But do you or I, as a sponsor or co-sponsor, have some obligation to verify this person's good repute? Likewise, does your chapter or the state society, in addition to the national society, have any obligation to verify? And if you go through some of these checks, what if you find something? What are you going to do about it? So what I'm just going to show you here is what we decided to do. We felt this was a reasonable minimum. Oops. And we have a full-blown membership application policy. This is just a piece of it. So we went through, and our state board decided, and we approved this policy. And we have said, we feel it's the responsibility of the sponsors to determine whether they believe the applicant meets this requirement about being a citizen of good repute. And we picked these three sites as a minimum, and we also normally say, hey, go ahead and check, Google them on the internet too. But we have a state, Michigan's sex offender registry, there's a national sex offender registry, and there's a Michigan Department of Corrections called OTIS, Off Offender Tracking Information System. So the first two will gives us pretty good information for those that have had convictions or incidents in the state of Michigan, and then there's the national one. Now, I'm sure a number of people are saying, we can't expect our people to sign these or to do these just as a sponsor. And we don't either, really. What we really do is, again, the way we do applications, almost all of them are done solely or at least partially by the chapter registrars and genealogists. So in reality, it's our chapter registrars and genealogists that do these checks. And this is the group that's also the genealogy committee. And we find, we have the great number of checks come up positive. Since we put this in about 2 or 3 years ago, might have been 2 years ago now. We've had 2 people that showed up on the Michigan Sex Offender Registry, and a few years before that, we had one person that was a serious issue, who was a convicted felon. Seemed he wanted to assault a U.S. congressman, and got in a little federal trouble because of that. So the number that we have come up with is a very small percentage of what we have, but we've used that. And I'll tell you, in the 2 that were on the Michigan Sex Offender Registry, both chapter registers asked me what they should do, and I just put together a basic letter, email, and I didn't accuse them of anything. I just said, hey, we ran a check, and on the Michigan Sex Offender Registry, it has a person by your name, and I don't know, I think it had age and hometown listed on the registry. Can you help us determine whether this is actually you or not? And we request a copy of his birth certificate, because it's going to need to provide anyway. And we said, if we can clear this up, we can pursue this. In both cases, they admitted that it was them. One, say contritely, if you want to use that term. The other was pretty offended about it. But I just said, hey, if this is you, you're probably not going to get 2 sponsors within the chapter you're applying to sign your registration, and they both dropped it. So it's worked fairly well. Like I said, I tried to put together a diplomatic statement that, so we're not accusing you of this, but we found this somebody by your name and your hometown and about your age is on the registry. Can you help us clear this up? And that's worked for us. So if you don't have something like this, I suggest that you consider it at your state level, because again, going back to the basic thing, when, as far as I'm concerned, in the national bylaws, and it's basically expecting this to, somebody to make sure that this is checked out. It does not say anything specifically in the national bylaws about who should check this out or who should guarantee that they're citizen good repute. I looked to see if maybe it made some statement relative to the sponsor and co-sponsor, but it does not. It just says you need a sponsor and co-sponsor current member, or currently in good standing. So it is pretty fuzzy on information I got from national, but we decided to take it as a serious issue, and that's what we did on the state. There was one other thing we did, and again, I'm not sure what you do at your state, but if you think about what are the approvals on the back, after, besides the sponsors, you got the state registrar, who we consider he's basically just approving the lineage and the Patriot service, and you've got the state secretary who's given it a final approval. And was some concern about, did we want to put this entire thing on the back of the state secretary to say he's making sure it's acceptable? So what we did was, there's also a line on there about approval of the board of managers or state board. And so we added a little amendment to our constitution or bylaws to say that when it comes to the state secretary, he can choose to sign, and he has delegated the responsibility to sign for the state board if he so chooses. But if an application comes to him that he's concerned about, and we had this specific one in mind, since there is a spot for the state board to approve, he is allowed to make his own decision. And if he's not comfortable with signing it on his own, he can take it to the state board at the next state board meeting, and the board as a whole will decide whether to approve that person's application. So we tried to make this not put it on any one person's back, but to address it in a serious manner. And that's what we've been doing for the past couple of years. Okay, just a couple more, a little more positive note to finish this off. Genealogy workshops. Again, I know different people have different setups, but you should consider this, especially from a chapter basis. This genealogy workshops are another opportunity to go for more members for your chapter and for SAR. Lots of groups you can work with, libraries, societies, DAR chapters, and even start your own. We have a strategic planning committee that wanted to take more positive action here. So we're promoting chapter level genealogy workshops, and we've got a committee, or a couple of guys actually working on creating a template for running them over the next year or so, because many chapters we propose that to someone, they go, well, that's great, I have no clue what to do. So the bottom line was for Michigan people volunteering for this project. And the other one that I strongly recommend for the various states, I know some states have them, I don't know if everybody does, but that would be a state genealogy committee. Frankly, we had, although it was a standing committee per our bylaws and chaired by the state genealogists for I don't know how long, we didn't really have one like some other, like other committees that we still don't have. But after I did the first set of these in the summer of 2020, we kind of said, well, on one hand, we really got to have some follow-up. We can't just do 6 classes and drop it and put everybody on their own. And we'd actually started to have a reasonable amount of camaraderie with our chapter genealogists and registrars. Keep this in mind. This was in the summer of 2020, pandemic in full effect, no in-person meetings. So this is where we started these classes and started them as Zoom. So we just said, well, why don't we have a monthly Zoom meeting, and we'll just talk about whatever's come up and whatever questions people have, or just try to keep improving in our ability to research and prepare applications. So we've now done that for 2 years. We're into our 3rd year this fall, meeting monthly, 10 out of 12 months of the year. I have my own little quirky way of doing it. So in my book, all chapter genealogists and registrars, and we have a number of assistants, were welcome to join, but they had to indicate that they were really interested. I do not like state committees where the state president's either puts the chapter president on every committee if he doesn't come up with somebody, or just assumes somebody's on there. So I basically said, I put out a couple of invitations, and actually I got everybody but one chapter genealogist and one chapter registrar to say they were willing, and we've had pretty good attendance. We normally have 75% attendance. We've got about 20 people on the committee, and we normally have 14, 15, 16 on there. And purpose of the meeting is what I just said. We're just trying to continue to improve the quality of the applications. We exchange ideas, we solve problems. If somebody has a particular issue, we'll try and address it, and trying to keep improving our knowledge as we go along. So final bullet is workload balance. And I just want to leave you with this. I hear in my state and other people all the time. I've heard various comments on this group. Some people are do, I'll just say, a lesser amount. Some people do a greater amount. Some people say you ought to be very proactive, and for some people that works. If they choose to be very proactive and maybe spend almost all their day every day working on it, hey, that's great, and they get a lot of applications in. But my experience over the several years I've been involved in Michigan is this is the number one reasons for the chapter genealogists and registrars quit. They just get to the point where they say, it's taken too much time and I got time for nothing else. And my wife's giving me a hard time. I'm spending too much time on applications. And my response is, number one, keep in mind that being a chapter genealogist registrar, to do it right, you've got a lot more training and experience than most other chapter officers. Secretary, treasurer, president, VP, they can have no training and come in and they may do a crappy job, but they have that job. As far as I'm concerned, only a chancellor, legal advisor, in our case at the state level, has a whole lot of experience and knowledge to do this. So, and what I found, the third bullet, we've really pushed on the contact messages we get through the national website and got them out to the chapters. And a few of the chapters get a whole lot of these contact messages. And as your chapter gets bigger and more people find out about it, it's more work. So this is my advice to you. Your number one asset is your ability to say no. Frankly, I don't care. Anybody here can take me on and say, hey, you got to do this. You got to do everything you can to get every applicant into SAR. And my response is, no, I don't. I'm going to do what I can. I have to balance the amount of time I work on applications with the rest of my life. And I decide how much work I can do for each applicant. And part of that is based on their involvement and their interests. So my advice is to you is just make your own decision. If you feel it's too much, then back off a little bit. If you like doing this, you'll find it's better if you back off a little bit and stay at it than burn yourself out and just drop it. Again, another item that's food for thought. And with that, I am done. And I will, stop sharing. And Genealogist General, you are in charge.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dennis. This has been an outstanding presentation for the last 6 weeks. And on behalf of the genealogy world, I really thank you for taking your time to offer this for everybody to work with. We did have some questions, so give you a chance to relax for a second, and I'll give you one of them. What do you consider advanced age when you're expediting? What did you use or do you use in Michigan?
We don't have a specific age in Michigan. Frankly, usually the ones that come in that category are more health issues. People that are either in hospice or have little time to live and or expected life. And we pretty much leave that up to the requester, which usually comes out of the chapter. If the chapter feels or the chapter registrar says, hey, I'm working on this guy and he's really interested, but he's in hospice and he's got 3 months projected to live, then we take that as acceptable. So we don't really have a item. I think we had one a few years ago and the guy was 100. So we figured that was good. We put him in for expedited.
Okay. I had a question on grandfathering. Are uncles eligible in the grandfather community?
Uncles are not eligible. If you look at that list, it's from the previous, current, former member on down. One of the reasons they don't say uncle, and I had this come up, is as soon as you say uncle, that does not necessarily, somebody's going to call along and say, well, here's my uncle. He doesn't happen to be in the bloodline, but he's my uncle. So while I agree that in theory, if you were, as long as you stayed in the bloodline, some people say, well, it's within 2 generations or 2 generational links. That's not what the bylaw says. It goes from the person younger, or I guess the only older one theoretically would be an older brother.
Okay, we have a question, and I'm not sure you're the one to answer it, but do all societies have a state genealogist?
I have no clue. And as long as I think whoever brought that one up, I'm going to pay him to bring it up so I can jump on you and Chairman Schwetke and anybody else that happens to be here. Personally, I think one of my pet peeves in SAR is how the term the officer genealogist is treated or mistreated. And it's not properly done at the state level, and we have nothing special at our chapter level. And I actually have asked a few people at headquarters and past officers, and the best I can get out of it was somebody decided we needed a genealogist general 10 or 15 years ago, and they put it in. But the best answer I got was they were afraid to tell the states what to do, so they just ignored states. And I think, personally, a state genealogist, while you could consider it optional of whether the state has one or not, I think they ought to be considered equivalent to the state registrar. But they are not in privileges now. State genealogist does not have right edit access to the membership database, for instance, without special consideration.
Okay, I'm going to open up to some questions that raised hands, and I'm going to look back at the chat here a little bit. Ron Bearden, you're up.
Thank you,
Uh-oh.
Gary.
Strap in.
Dennis, excellent sessions. Especially, I think the further down you went in the weeks, the better they got. And of course, you and I corresponded some last week about some things that I shared with you. But a couple of comments tonight on some different things. One of the last things was brought up as a reason we're losing chapter registrars. One of the reasons I lose chapter registrars in Alabama is because we're throwing so much stuff at them that's ever changing. And most of these people that come to me from the chapters as registrars are not genealogists to begin with. And I keep trying to instill into the chapter people, look, you need to find the best genealogist in your chapter. That needs to be your registrar. Because these guys you're sending me would make great treasurers. They might make great presidents, but they can't spell genealogy, much less look anything up. And so I'm in a constant stage of training new registrars, and some of the guys get just overwhelmed, especially with all the changes and things, and I try to calm them down and keep them. But so with that in mind, this new rule about policy about not putting anything on the application we don't document, I think it's a great idea. But in every chance, I've in the last 2 days, I've mentioned it to a couple of people I've talked to along the way. Hey, if you don't have a document for it, leave it off. If the guy doesn't give you a birth record on his wife and her marriage record, in the eyes of the SAR, she does not exist. Leave her off. She wants to complain about it, the next time she can give us her birth certificate, But, I got an application this past week. Actually, I'm going to mail it tomorrow to our state secretary for signature. Been reviewing some the last few days. And I I think the guy should have known better, but he included a lot of dates and places on the application, which he doesn't document. And I kind of went over this stuff with him gently, and all, but a lot of these changes have come about so quickly, and so many in the last 6 months or so, that I feel like these guys deserve a little opportunity to spread their wings a little bit, and without having to double up on their workload. And frankly, we're volunteers. We don't get paid to check these things. I never have asked for it. Don't ever expect it. And the same thing with my chapter registrars. So if I get an application in, and it's a good application and all the lineage is correct, and they've added a few dates and places that they don't document, I'm not going to kick it back to them. I'm going to say, look, you need to tighten up a little bit, and in the future, this is what we expect. But that application's going in, and if they want to bracket it, they can bracket it. But I just think that when we've got, there's certain things applications should be kicked back for, and certain things that we need to let it ride, with the idea that we're trying to correct what's going on for future reference. We can maintain our chapter registrars if we do that. But I think if we start kicking back every little thing, oh, you got 5 dates on here that you don't document, it's going back. I'm not going to do it.
So a couple of points. Number one, that is one of the reasons we have a monthly genealogy committee meeting of chapter registrars, because we go over this stuff constantly, of what recent changes were and stuff like that. In that strain, I do not disagree with you, but I take it from the standpoint, the quicker I get that information out and the quicker I repeat it to these guys and say, hey, you've already been told 3 months in a row,
Right.
you should have that down now.
Yeah, and I think there will come a time when I will say, look, we've had this conversation 3 times. Now I'm sending it back to you, But Gary can tell you just about every time I send out anything to our people here in Alabama, I copy him on it so he knows it's going out and what's being said, and all. And if it's something that Bill sends out, I'll copy Bill, the same way, so they know this stuff's going out. But well, let me move on to a couple of other things.
Well, let me finish up on that one.
Sure.
There's 2 other points there. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but talking about having everything documented, that's in 3.5001.
I know
that was changed in March. We're now 7 months since that change was made, and so in my mind, everybody's had plenty of time to know that. The other point, which I got to get my digs in on the online application, and that is, hey, use an online application. It's swipe, delete, and that information's gone. We're not, because it's a chapter registrar, 9 times out of 10 plus is the person who's printing that application. So once he's all set and is ready to do that, if the person hasn't submitted the documentation, 2 seconds and that information is gone. We're not waiting out. We're not sending applications back or anything. So go ahead, Ron.
Okay. And we've got some areas where I know we need to boost up some, and I've got a good team of chapter registrars in Alabama, and they do a good job. Our pending rate is very low, and if we get a pending application, we don't let it sit there. We get right on it. We jump on it and try to get it resolved as quickly as we possibly can. The age factor, again, somebody brought it up a few minutes ago. I think I asked Dave Cook about that at leadership. He said, Ron, I'm not even going to go there, because I know that in the past, I had once, 4 or 5 years ago, an 80-year-old. I'm not 80 yet. I mean, I'm not too far back down the line, but I'm not 80 yet. And I know a whole lot of people younger than I am that are no longer with us, but I figured an 80-year-old deserved to have his application expedited. So I sent in a request and it got expedited by whoever signed off on it, whether it was the GG or the chairman of the genealogy committee or the ED or whoever it was. I don't remember who it was. And then a couple of years ago, I did the same thing. I had an 80-year-old send it in and it got rejected. He's not old enough. I'm thinking, well, you know, if we've got that in the policy, I think we need to define what is advanced age. Whether it's 80, 82, 85, whatever it is, we need to define it if we're going to have it in there. If we're not going to define it, let's take it out.
Oh, we got 2 of the 3 approvers online, so I think they heard your message.
Grandfathering. I've never grandfathered one, and I never will. You know, if the information's out there, let's get it up front. Submit it. We have never had a reason that there were probably some we could have grandfathered, but we have never grandfathered one since I've been state registrar. And I don't see the point. And I think in talking with our staff members in Louisville, when I was up there for leadership, a lot of them feel the same way about that. And I agree that we need to have a consistent method of updates. You mentioned a little earlier that rule about documentation of all the facts on the application had been in the book for 7 months. Nobody got that book 7 months ago. Nobody got it 5 months ago or 3 months ago. We got the latest versions right after the September 30th passing of those 2 manuals, and they were sent out to all of us, I think by Gary or Bill One. I don't remember who sent them out. And then I sent them out to all my people immediately. That's the first time I can ever remember sending out the manuals to everybody in a blanket sending. And you're right. I mean, you know, there've been in the past where we would have fee increases for applications. When did we find out about it? 2 weeks after Congress, when we've already got stuff in the pipeline. So I agree there needs to be a.
Yep, that was my consistency point exactly.
Yep, we need it. Let's see. Oh, I had a question for, I guess, Gary. 2 or 3 weeks ago, the state registrars gained access to all of the SAR applications on file, as I'm sure all of you are aware. And it was mentioned at that time that we had hoped in the future to get where we could get maybe the state genealogist and also who was also one of our chapter registrars in Alabama, and maybe the chapter registrars where they could have access to the same things I can see now. I've been using that a lot. You know, guys will call me and say, you know, well, are there any, you know, applications SAR on this Patriot? And I said, yeah, let's look at it. Let me look right quick, see what's there, see what the dates on them are and what they use to prove the application. And I think that would be a great tool for our state genealogists throughout the nation and also our chapter registrars. So is there any in the near future plans to release that, Gary?
Right now, well, last week, the state genealogists were added to have the same access that state registrars are. I did not pass that out as information. But
all right, were they notified of that?
No.
But they were added.
They were added.
Okay, I'll let him know that.
Yeah. The chapter registrars is something that I've been trying to push for, but we're getting a little bit of pushback by the staff because they want to still get their money for having applications used, they're purchased from the.
Well, we can't use those because they got that red stuff all over them.
Right. No, it's not that. It's the they're thinking that if the chapter registrars get to see all that, then they're not going to buy them. They'll just say, go look at that application, which is what we can do now. We can just say, look at this application and the SAR, and the staff has it on their files. So I'm not sure. I know we've got an income that comes. I've got to prove that we haven't lost it with getting access to the state points of contact. And
Yeah.
then we'll move it.
Just a quick comment about background checks. We don't do background checks per se. There have been a couple of guys in the last 15 years or so that we would not accept when we found out information about them. One guy's application that actually, one fellow would not sponsor him. He went in a different direction, got somebody else unsuspectingly to sponsor him, came to me, everything looked good, I signed it. Well, the first guy had kind of caught wind that this guy was going to kind of go try to come through the back door. So he called me. I said, yeah, I signed it, sent it to the state secretary. So he said, we don't, no, we can't do this. So I called the state secretary. I said, hold it, don't process it. And so anyway, we agreed that we weren't going to process the application. And I think we sent his documents back, but we retained possession of the application because by that time it already had all our signatures on it. And it is, as it says on the application, property of the SAR, not him at that point. But, and there was one young man that a mother was wanting to get a 20-year-old guy or son. The son's father and grandfather were SAR. And there was just something odd about it. And I did a little checking online and found this website that would make anybody blush. And so I just called the mother and told her, I said, are you aware your son has a website? She said, no. I said, well, maybe you ought to check it out. But the bottom line is, I can't find 2 sponsors in Alabama that will sign for it. So she must have checked it out. I never did hear from her again. But I don't want to myself get into, I stay so busy processing applications and talking with perspectives and all that I don't want to get into the policing end of things. For a lot of reasons. I wish there was a way we could do this. And in Alabama, in most of our chapters, we're in places where we pretty much know people, or they know some of us, and we don't have a lot of problems with any of that kind of thing anyway. So I guess we'll pretty much keep doing it like we're doing it until a problem develops, and then we'll have to figure out a solution. Thank you, gentlemen. I enjoyed it tonight.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Gary Jensen, you're up.
Thank you. I guess my first question, I have 2 questions and a comment. The first one is the online lineage appeals. And I guess my question is, by the time we find out that there's a name been changed or something else, the application's been approved, submitted, and it works its way back from national to the state secretary to the chapter secretary, and then back down the line. So how long is that able to be looked at and corrected? Dennis?
I think there's a time, I don't know if Bill Schwetke or Gary could answer it. I think there's a time, but yeah, it's a good question. I don't know what specifically that time is. It wasn't mentioned in the policy.
The reason I mentioned that is because staff had taken in an application and read a line item that was not supported by what we present forward and changed the spelling of one of the primary spouse's names, totally different. And by the time we got it, was able to go get it corrected, I was told I had to submit a different application. By the time you see it come back to the person, and that happened to be for my stepson's application. So I was just wanting to know a timeline for those type of things, if there was one. So that was the one question. The second
Gary,
question.
do you happen to have an idea?
Something that says 45 days in my mind is one thing, and then 6 months is another thing, but I don't don't have it
Yeah, the
memorized.
45 day, I did the same thing, but I think the 45 days is for pending it and reviewing it without putting it back in line.
Right, okay. That's it.
So it may be the 6 months. I will try to find out.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you. The next one was in reference to the grandfathered statement. Can they be reopened with new documentation to support that lineage line?
Oh, absolutely. Matter of fact, it's actually, it was on that slide that and if you ask somebody like a staff genealogist about one for possible grandfathering, that's a standard line they'll come back with, and it'd just be like any other application. So for instance, I had a supplemental and some information got bracketed. When I did the next supplemental with that same information on there, you can submit not only your record copy, but you submit more documentation, you put it in your application and they'll review it. Yes. And I think that's what Ron Bearden was talking about as far as, trying never to have a grandfathered application. So you'd submit the record copy, but on whatever one you want to correct or provide more proof, you just put that in the appropriate reference section for that generation.
The last one's more of a comment. I work with the Patriot Research Committee, and this last week, if you haven't been on the line lately, we rolled out a new feature that now when you open up the Patriot record, you can see the child that the application goes through, which was a major push to get it there. So just a comment for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Brian
welcome.
Brevard?
Yes, Gary. Couple of things. One is this has been an excellent course. And one thing that I've really relied on heavily is in the application preparation guide is the appendix for the sample application form, so that I'm getting it, getting everything in how it'd like to be at national. And adding on to that is there any way we can add another appendix in there for the documents of how they really need to be highlighted so that everybody's working off the same page? And I've got that. And then the other thing that I do have is when we go on to the SAR website under the apply in 4 easy steps, the link to the application preparation guide did not get updated once the new revision come out.
Okay, where is that again? What was the?
That's off the very first, off the home page. And when you go up to apply or join now, and then you go to apply in 4 easy steps. And then the last step is start your application, and the application preparation guide, that link is no longer working.
Yeah, Gary, I've seen that a couple of times, I think. And what I think is maybe happening, you could take it up with McPitzer, is that it seems like the policies, for instance, the links take you to a copy that's available to non-members or if you're not signed in. But the APG link seems to take you back to the members forms and manuals version, and then you have to be a member and logged in before you can see it. So I've always felt that it certainly implied that we're allowing an applicant to see both the application preparation guide and the policies, and I think some of the links may be pointed to the wrong spot.
Part of the problem that I think Brian has run into is that I eliminated all the old APMs and all the old genealogy policy. And
Okay,
that
it's
link
Gary's
was-
fault.
Yep, I accept that. So thank you, Brian. I'll go chase that
Okay.
down. And if you find others, let me know so we can go chase them and get them fixed. Mick will
Okay,
fix them. We
will
just
do.
have, Okay, Ralph Nelson, come on down.
Yeah. Thank you, Gary. A little earlier in the conversation, there was some suggestion that the chapter registrar could easily erase things that are on the applicant's application. And I would just note that you should be careful that you consult with the applicant during this, because it's his application, and sometimes they're rather sensitive about having people take stuff off their application that they carefully put there. I think that's one of the reasons why it's a good idea for the chapter registrar to be making the application or preparing the application rather than the applicant. It's too easy for the applicant to put undocumented information up there and then forget to take it off again toward the end. My recommendation has been, and I thought it was the recommendation of the genealogist general earlier, that the chapter registrar would prepare the application as well as, you know, instead of reviewing the wrong stuff that the applicant puts on there, that the chapter registrar would get the data first. And when you have most of the documentation in hand, then you would use that documentation to fill out the application. Let's see. I guess that was basically the thing. That one thing that disturbs me a little bit is that on the SAR website, as you were just pointing out, the person who's a prospect is taken directly to the point where they can start an application online. And of course, that begins the process of them putting undocumented information on, and us having to back it out later on. It would be nicer if you would take that off the screen and instead simply have them refer to the state and have the state refer them to a chapter, so the chapter registrar can talk with them, get the documentation, and start the application with the documentation in hand. Thank you.
Okay, and for those of you who are trying to guess, this is the Ralph Nelson who will be presenting next week on teaching his replacement, what he's going to do, because he's looking for a replacement. So this is the way to get going in that direction. So Ralph, thank you, and we'll look forward to next week. The last question that came up was, will the series be repeated in the spring for new registrars? And Dennis has agreed to do that, but I'm going to hold off with the hopes that we can get the online application quirks fixed. There are about 6 quirks that need to be cleaned up. And once we can get that, and Dennis can adjust his first presentation, then we'll negotiate with Dennis to see if we can get him to work again. Because Dennis, this has been an outstanding presentation. And
Well, you know, I've agreed that we would do it again. So I'll let you figure out when's the appropriate dates, and we'll do it again. Because the other piece from my point, as I pointed out, that the first 4 sessions were off the old APM too. So I will I did the last 2, but I will upgrade those to the new information, and we may even have a revised APG after the November genealogy committee meeting, or there were some errors found and some cleanup and things like that. And so hopefully by the spring, all 6 sessions will be updated to whatever the latest is, and including being able to announce some fixed quirks.
okay, and there was a comment that said that the previous seminars have been loaded on the website, and you can go back and look at them and catch up if you got in the middle of, or in the middle of this presentation. There was, Dennis, maybe you can give a technique here with additional proof. How is the easiest way to get everyone's attention that you have new proof information on the application? You said you've got the second application going in and you want to change.
You do that by simply citing your new proof on the application. So for instance, you're doing a supplemental and you're using your previous or somebody's previous record copy for the primary citation for a given link. You would have that down there. Then if you've got a new death certificate to add or a new land record to add, you just put it on there as another citation, and you'd put it in the proper order to the in the packet for the staff genealogist.
Okay. And we're gonna try to get the slides. Dennis has been good about getting them to me. We'll try to get them up on the website here after this week, get all 6 of the slides sets. Trying to catch up with some things. If I didn't get your question in here, how about raising your hands? Find the raise hand in your reactions section, and then we can try to catch up. Okay, Ron, you're back up, I guess. Sorry.
I just want to clarify, what is Ralph's session gonna be on next week?
Ralph is going to be the prequel to this. This is if you get a brand new registrar and doesn't know what he's doing, this is the 101 of registrar. How do you get into it? And
Okay.
then the 6-week session will follow on very well. But this is boy, you just got screwed. You're now the chapter registrar. Go to it, buddy. And hopefully this will give them
Okay.
a step
Thanks.
at it. Okay. Okay, there are some specific questions that I'll try to answer later on. Gary Briggs has a question. Who do you consider as the primary responsible for preparing the application? And then he gives the applicant, the chapter registrar, the chapter genealogist, state registrar, the state genealogist, and what are the degrees of priority or responsibility? I think from this training, I would go with chapter registrar. This is the chapter registrar's game. Everybody else has a very good input, but I'll say that at state level, you're overwhelmed with multiple chapters coming in simultaneously. So the chapter registrar has got a major thing to carry. Okay, John Kraft, go ahead.
Thanks, Gary. Great presentation so far. I have always been either a chapter registrar or the state registrar for the last probably, I don't know, over 3 years now. And we don't have specific a differential between a genealogist and a registrar. And I'm just curious, what is the difference from the SAR standpoint? I don't know, I know what my responsibilities are, and I'm the registrar and the genealogist and the paperwork guy and everything else. So how would you define that?
Okay, I'm going to give you my definition because I had to make it up myself. Same problem. Nobody told us. The registrar is the guy who does all the work. The genealogist does the research and goes after that loose end that you can't figure out. And that's the way we're doing it in North Carolina. I will tell you that in Missouri, the genealogist does all the work. The registrar does the paperwork that comes back through, like they do it at national. So every state society has a different way of defining it. And we haven't done a very good job of doing that nationally.
What is the difference in access levels?
The registrar can see all the data from the chapters. I mean, they have the same access as a treasurer, or excuse me, say chapter vice president, chapter secretary, and chapter president, and the chapter registrar all can see all members in the chapter. Right now, the state level registrars and genealogists both have access to the PRS to be able to do the research, backing up. But we haven't got that to the chapter level
Well,
yet.
Gary, my understanding of it and what I see is a little different. On the chapter level, the chapter registrar has edit and write access to everybody in the chapter, all the applications. The chapter genealogist has read-only access. So he can see it, but he can't change it.
Okay, I agree.
And
Good to know.
that's been the same issue on the state level that I've had when they went to this new fancy, we fixed the system, all of a sudden I lost my right access to applications on the state level. But I've gotten some of that back, and as Gary says, they're getting the state level cleared up, but I'm not sure that they've done anything to the chapter level yet.
Okay, Robert from Illinois.
Well, after listening to this seminar tonight, you've eliminated all the politicians and judges in Illinois. So we won't be submitting as many applications now.
Well, it makes your job easier, right? That probably applies to more than just Illinois, right?
Well, we always send a governor to prison every 8 years. We have that record, okay?
You guys do have a good record on that one.
No, the thing it is, I am concerned about the background check. Because I'm in another organization which I do background checks. And there's some legal liability there when you do the background checks. Okay. And
Well, it depends on what you do with them.
well, the
There's-
thing it
There's
is,
no legal liability. If I can check
No,
on
no.
anybody, I don't have legal liability.
no. Beyond sex offender. If I find a position I have, if I don't turn in anyone that has anything to do negative with children to the police, I can be held legally liable.
Okay, yeah, I think you're missing the point of what that check is. That's the one we use is the sex offender registry. They're already been turned into the police. They already have a record and they're on a public registry as a sex offender. This is
Yeah, but-
not saying you found a guy who likes little boys in the next block.
Yeah, but the thing it is, I have one across the street and he's coming from another state and he's not on our register.
Well, that's a different point than what we're talking about here.
Well, he's been talking to me about SAR membership.
Keep in mind, and this is what we did. You're not required to sign for anybody. A guy can fill out an application, turn it into you. You don't have to sign it as a sponsor if you don't want to. That's a volunteer and has to be done twice by volunteers. So again, where's the legal liability? You can choose you're not under legal obligation to sign the guy's application just because he can't put it in front of you. And that's exactly how we handled the two guys on the sex offender registry, was to say, hey, I just said, hey, if you're this guy and you've admitted that you are, I'm not sure. I didn't say no. I said, I'm not sure you're going to find 2 SAR members in Michigan that will sign your application. And that was it. They were done.
Okay. Anything else, Robert?
No, well, the other thing, as far as being new, okay, I've done genealogy searches for 20 years, but the thing of it is, the things that you're asking and the applicants that I'm getting, they're not familiar with genealogy searches. In other words, on this 20 applications I could be working on, I figured up I got about 3,000 hours if I really would work on their application. Because the kind of documentation you're asking, they don't know. And they're not familiar with computers. They feel uncomfortable with computers, you know. So I'm just saying is that the older generation needs lots of help if we want to become SAR members. And like in my chapter, I'm 79 years old and I'm a kid. and part of the reason we're not getting the younger generation in there is they're working on their careers. They're not working on their genealogy.
Okay. Dave Robeson.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to, a couple of points. First of all, Dennis Van Warmer, I would like to get your personal cell phone number, your address, your email address, anything you can get me so I can get in touch with you whenever the hell I feel like it.
All you gotta do is go on the Blue membership database.
These have been excellent sessions, and I'm sorry I missed part of last week's, but we'll get caught up to that. Well, anyway,
But when the
me get
slides
back
come
to-
out, my email address is on the title of every title slide of each session, so.
yeah, thank you.
That'll
Thank you
start
very
it.
much. I was named, well, first of all, I'm a professional genealogist, or I used to be before I got involved with the SAR. I don't know. You know, the time issue is very, very difficult. How much do I spend here and there and everywhere else? But I was named the registrar genealogist for the state of Massachusetts. And this is before I even learned how to spell SAR. But I did get a half hour, 45 minutes of training, and been lumbering along since. And I just wanted to point out to some of you folks that maybe you have the same problem that I have. Of all the chapters in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I have at least, well, I'd say half of them. The registrars are absolutely brilliant. Bing, bang, boom. The applications come to me. Everything's wonderful. The electronic application system's working out great for them. And then on the other ones, they send me names and expect me to stop everything I'm doing and work with their people. But unfortunately, that's not happening, and nor is it going to happen because I simply don't have the time. But I do appreciate these sessions. I'm even going to come back and listen to the one-on-one sessions because I know that there might be something that I may have missed that would prove handy. But so far, having reasonably good success in getting applications approved. My next challenge is to go after some of the pendings, and I've got an assistant that's going to help me out here starting this week. That's my biggest problem is pending applications. But mostly, I wanted to thank Dennis for taking his time to put these presentations together, the PowerPoints, and spending all the time with us, teaching us how to do the right thing. Thank you, Dennis.
Oh, you're welcome.
TL Holden.
I really have just two comments. One has to do with the online application. Nowhere in the instructions for a prospective member where they can go out and create their own account and fill out that form online, there's nowhere in there that it tells them that when they get ready to print that it must be on SAR watermark paper. So when it comes to the chapter registrar's job, we basically have to recreate that. So I think that's a warning thing that ought to be sent to a prospective member, that they need to get with a local chapter, work out those details. The other thing is along your comments, Gary, about what's the difference between a chapter registrar and a genealogist. Here in North Texas, I'm listed as a genealogist for all of the chapters. I am a chapter registrar, but the privileges that I have as a genealogist are no different than a regular SAR member. So I can go out to the PRS, I can look at that, and that's, I've got the look capability, but no special privileges. And all I'm doing there is assisting that applicant in finding those hard to find documents or the approved documents that SAR is going to accept. And that's my comments.
Okay, is the state identifying you as the state genealogist?
I am not the state genealogist. I'm a genealogist. Our state is divided up between North and South, and I work with the northern chapters.
Okay. Okay. Dear me. Let me get back to what I'm doing here. Uh, I don't know if it's Cindy that's on, but Cindy Fisher.
Actually, it's Charles Fisher. I'm using my wife's access.
Okay,
Forgive that. And I'm a new registrar here in Tennessee. And I've heard a lot of the online application part, and I'm pretty familiar with doing applications and had quite a few successful personal ones myself. But my question is, like Mr. Holden said, getting online access for me as a registrar, I wanted to confirm whether that is or is not possible. And if it is possible, where do I go to get further information? Because I have been unable to find any of that.
Are you talking about chapter registrar?
Yes, sir.
Go to your state secretary. The state secretary has authority to give chapter officers their privileges.
Which they did, but I have no instructions so far. I guess I.
Oh,
can
I'm sorry.
say, but no instructions on how to get there to begin with. And I think that should be available to us that are at least attempting to strike this balance between online applications, paper. To me, online applications is the way to go.
So you're talking about wanting to see those online applications?
Yes, sir.
So you need to log into the website, go to the blue member database, which is under quick links. And then when that comes up, there should be a black vertical sideband on the left, at least mine usually is. And it has things like my applications and this and that, and it should say chapter dashboard.
Chapter dashboard. Okay.
And you click on that and you'll get some kind of a dashboard with a few of everything, but there'll be a number of tabs and one of them is applications. And then you can go there and you should start seeing all the applications that have been put in online for your chapter. Not, you won't see other ones, but you'll see the online applications.
Very good.
If-
And
if-
last- Go ahead.
If I could butt in here a bit and ask Dennis to do all of us a favor, and I do what you just described, but could you go to the SAR.org and share your screen and show everybody step by step how to get there?
Sure.
I think that would help. Thank you.
Okay.
And while you're prepping that, Gary, I would like to thank you. I've bothered you several times lately, but I received the information from the North Carolina archives today on that kind of strange relative of mine back in the past, and it works.
outstanding. Even the strange relatives will respond to you, huh?
Okay, so you should be seeing my website on the homepage on SAR.
Yep.
There's quick links.
Yep.
Third one down, and I'm logged in. You got to be logged in. Members database blue. Now, here's on the left. Now, since I'm a state officer, I also have the state dashboard, but I'm also my chapter's registrar genealogist. So I hit chapter dashboard. That comes up. Now you see, it'll say most recent applications, but if I go to the next tab, applications. Now, here's regular, supplemental, junior, memorial. They're, you know.
All excellent. Thank you very much.
So, and if you, let me back up one here. So that's how you get there. And let me just show something. Okay, well, it's not gonna do that. Let me back up to state. As this is the state dashboard for state people. You can pick different states so that you can go and view stuff on another one. I'll get old Ron here on Alabama. Go. Now I can see his. I won't be able to do anything with them, but I can see them. But I
Very good.
go back to my chapter dashboard, and this is useful for state. Again, now you see all the chapters. I'm also an international society, so ignore that. But there's all my chapters. And if I'm trying to find something for a specific chapter, I find it easier to go here and say, I want Detroit Metropolitan chapter. Now I'll see just what's in Detroit Metropolitan. So,
Excellent, excellent.
so that's where it is. And you got your applications that you've initiated are here. And this will take you to the main blue database, back to your stuff to start. And this will take you back to the web page.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
While you're there, can you show them the e-learning portal?
Okay, again, this kind of second level pull downs here. The first one up here, the second level has e-learning right here. There you go. Here's your courses. Here's the ones we've been doing. And module 6 tonight should show up here shortly. And here's the other one. Somebody, I think Brooks had mentioned this one. This is the youth protection training. Kind of goes back to that sex offender registry. But if you haven't done this, I recommend that you do that. It takes half hour maybe, but if you haven't thought it through, it gives you some good ideas or good information about how you need to think about working with youth, whether it's our youth programs or whether it's CAR.
Okay, Dennis, let me jump in here. These registrar training modules are ones that you have to enroll in a class. Go ahead and click on read more. If you're not enrolled, then you go over to the black and you say, I want to take this course. And then you get to see it all and you answer 5 questions and then you get a certificate. So,
And I'm not going to try because I might get the questions wrong, but
it's right. Don't want to embarrass ourselves. So that's if you want to take the course and get some type of recognition for it. If you want to just look at it, you need to go up into genealogy up on the top.
Oh, that's right.
And then go down to genealogy resources. There you go. And then all
Now you can
5 videos or 6, well, all 6 videos will be there. And
these are just the videos without the question and answers and
right.
ability to get
And it is a YouTube, so you get to enjoy the ad.
Yeah.
Look, Gary, would it be all right if Dennis showed everyone the access to the SAR applications that we've been granted to state and registrars and genealogists?
Oops. I go back here. What did you want to see?
Well,
He wants to go to the PRS.
Oh, the PRS.
Yeah. Just
Okay, so I'm logged in. I go to PRS. I happen to be a volunteer, so I got to log in also here. But now this is the new thing for state registrars and apparently genealogists also. I want to click on and I want to check my initial Patriots information. So I forgot what the heck I used for stuff. So it's Jacob Van Wormer. Here we are showing it's an application. So now I click on the P number, this link, and it takes me to this. And if I click on what do I get?
ACN.
ACN.
Huh?
Click on ACN.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. So ACN, if you over here, you get your normal purchase. If I click on ACN and I have the privileges, boom, I can now review the record copy, not just purchase. I can review it. So there's the digital. I click on that. And here's my actual original application. Notice it's full size. It is not reduced, so it does not have the NSSAR record copy stamp on it as one way to know that you can't be using this for a record copy. But that's how you get there as a state registrar, and as Gary says now, as a state genealogist. And I go down here and I can say, here's the capacity, and then this was on the old form. So here's my, I don't remember where it is anymore. Here
Why
it is.
does yours not have all the
References to
red
server.
ink on it?
What's that?
Why does yours not have all the red ink all over it?
These are
'Cause
the
I'm a
ones
good
that we
boy. I don't
downloaded.
know. I've never seen one with red ink.
Well,
These
if
are
I
down,
pull it, if I pull this
If
up,
you-
it says for NSSAR use only. It's just overlaid with red to
If you do
differentiate.
one,
To
if
differentiate.
you open one from a different state, then
No,
you'll
if I
get
open
that.
mine, it's got red all over it. It's stamped with for NSSAR use only.
the difference is Dennis is a volunteer in the
Okay.
PRS. You're,
Oh, is that what
you're
the
just-
difference is?
yeah,
Must be.
you can see things as a volunteer, but the Ron can't.
I was gonna say, I've never seen red on the ones I've looked at.
It's.
Okay,
I
Yeah,
think
more
if
accurate.
you,
Yeah, let's go back to two screens. I just want to point out the one piece that we talked about earlier. Go back to your Patriot, one more time to your Patriot.
oh, sorry, okay,
Under the PRS.
yep. I dumped
There's
it
another
all.
way to get to your stuff instead of typing it in there. Just go to your member search and put in your ID number.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Type your ID number in there real quick. There you go. That's a lot faster. And then search.
Comes up with the same thing. Now here we got
Yeah,
my
just click
various
on-
ones.
Well,
And now we're back to the same spot.
Back up one.
Back up one.
On screen. Click on the Patriot. Just click on one of your Patriots. There you go. Now, here's the screen I'm talking about where the child is. So you can see now that all of those applications went through the same Patriot, but some of them went through different children. Jacob, Laurel, and Sarah.
Yeah, and as you can see here, almost all of them went through Jacob, and we had just two different ones.
But that, for my point of view as the state registrar here, when we're doing research, that makes your life a lot easier. I don't have to look at all 10 of those to find which one I'm looking for to get to Sarah.
Okay.
Just a
Okay, I
tidbit
lost
for
it.
you.
Bill Edelin, you're up.
First of all, I want to thank Dennis for his help and response, and want everyone to know he does get back to you and respond. So I appreciate it. And Gary, we
Bill and I
appreciate
have had a couple of email exchanges.
Yeah, and I appreciate those. And Gary, I appreciate what you're doing for us as well. Dennis, this is really for, I guess, you to point out, but the gentleman, I don't know if it was Charles Fisher or Dave Robinson or Mr. Holden, but when someone's using the online application, and this happened to me a few times, where I was asked to handle a couple of the online applications, I had to have them go in there and put my chapter in so that it would show up in the chapter dashboard.
Yep.
So that was one of the things is if you're not seeing an application that you know is for your chapter, it could be that the prospective member, when he filled it out, he didn't put your chapter name in on the online application. So
And
that
I'll
was
give you
something-
a one reason for that, well, because I've had it and I requested it to be fixed, but it wasn't really fixed. And that is when the prospective member goes in and creates, say, his own guest ID, and he fills out that initial stuff, and then he goes into that first one and starts his application. I'm a little bit of conjecture here, but at first, the chapter pull-down menu does not show until you've entered what state you're in. And it seems to me either some of these guys that are new to it either don't notice that the chapter one shows up, or it's a little bit of delay and they click on through it. Well, what it then does is, at least in what I've seen in Michigan, it goes to the alphabetically first chapter in the state. And so every couple of months, the guy that's a chapter registrar gives me an email, says, hey, I got another one. You know, I live in the thumb in Michigan and this guy's in the UP, but he signed up for my chapter. Well, so as state genealogist, I can go in and do exactly what Bill's saying. I just go to the guy's application, switch his chapter to the appropriate one, and then we're good. But I've also done that. I'll give you another example that you might keep in mind. We had one person that was a chapter registrar that was not able to function for a month or two, and asked for some help. So a couple of the other chapter registrars said, okay, give me one. Well, again, as a state person, I just went in, changed the chapter name from the actual chapter to the chapter that the guy that was going to help out. And I said, when you get all done, just change the chapter name back to the other guy. It'll disappear from your chapter and it'll show back up under the correct chapter. So that's a little trick for if somebody's going to help somebody else on an application, but you only have chapter level privileges.
Okay, Chris or Charles Fisher, do you still have a question, or you just didn't take your hand down?
No, I'm good. Haven't taken my hand down.
Okay, okay. I appreciate everybody participating. We've had an hour and 50 minutes on this, and I'm sure we've lost a few because they're tired. But I will send out another invitation to everybody to look at Registrar Training 101 next week, and that'll be presented by Ralph Nelson. So thank you for your participation tonight. Thank you again, Dennis, for your excellent work. And we
Thanks
look
everybody
forward
for
to,
participating.
Hey,
Yes, sir.
Gary, will this be the same Zoom ID and
It
password?
should be, yes.
Okay. So just copy the link that we got now and for
Right.
next week, and we can go back to that one.
Right.
See, I'm really different because I'm not a full SAR member. I'm an associate member
Okay.
working in a registrar position.
Of course you are.
Hey,
Okay.
I appreciate your
much.
time. And it was great work, guys.
Okay. Have a good night.